Welcome to the Charity Connector. Hosted by Dominic Fenton and produced by Grow Radio, we give you an insight into the hearts of charities making waves in our world.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Charity Connector. I'm your host, Dom Fenton, and today I have two guests. The first time in this podcast history of the Charity Connector that I've actually got two guests on. Matt and Sammy, how are we?
Yeah, very well,
really
thanks.
good. Thank you for having us.
No problem at all. So, some people may know who you are, some may not. Why don't you just introduce yourselves to the audience for me?
I'm Matt Berman. I'm Artistic Director and Chief Exec of Cambridge Junction. If you don't know Cambridge Junction, we're the largest art centre in the east of England, in the centre of Cambridge, just on the wrong side of the tracks, if you know Cambridge, just to the south of the train line, on the site of what used to be Cambridge Cattle Market, actually. And we were built here in 1990, off the back end of the Criminal Justice Bill, if you remember that, where government was shutting down the free party scene in Cambridge, and there were what were known as the disco riots, which you can imagine for Cambridge were quite polite. Young people sitting down in the street, making their frustration known to the council. And at that point, a group was founded called the Cambridge Venues Group, which formed a grassroots campaign to establish the junction. So we've always been in and of the city, very much for the young people of the city, a home where young people can explore their creativity, where they can go to clubs, they can see music, they can see theatre and dance. And now they can come here and make films, they can make music here. So that's always been an essential part of our DNA. But we're quite radical as well in that we have always done the most contemporary work, the most edgy club music. We've got the biggest and longest running, the loudest and sickest drum and bass night in the country, Warning, which has been going since 1995 now. We've got a fantastic queer club night called Club Urania now. We've had everybody you can imagine has performed here. We've had Ed Sheeran, Amy Winehouse, Blur, Radiohead, Tom Jones, Patti Smith, all have graced our stages over the years. And so we've got this amazing sense of inspiration here for young people, and they can be really inspired through the program, and then they want to get up on stage as well. So we have a regular night called the Fiver, where young people can get up on stage and often do their first big gig in front of a big crowd in a big room. And people from that night have gone on to big things, performing at Glastonbury and places like that. Wow. From there. So like we're an essential part of culture in Cambridge, and people come here from all over the city, all over the county, all over the region to have great nights out, essentially.
Wow, so that's a fair amount. So
yeah.
Oh, and I should introduce myself as well. I'm Sammy. I've been development manager at Cambridge Junction for the past 2 years, so I still consider myself very new to the sector. I had that classic thing of leaving uni where you sort of don't know what you really want to do. So I started working with adults with learning disabilities, which at the time put me in contact with Cambridge Junction, who ran a program called Total Arts, which is a young arts group for young disabled artists who meet every fortnight. So I started working there, and that was my first introduction to Cambridge Junction as a charity. I think, like many other people, I knew of Cambridge Junction as the gig venue where I'd come and have some fun nights, but I didn't really know of them as a charity. So since then, I always had Cambridge Junction in the back of my mind that I'd love to work there one day. And luckily, a few years later, ended up getting a fantastic role here, where it's my job to fundraise for the brilliant programs that we put on as a charity.
Wow, there's so much to pick out there, even just now, even just from the intros. So obviously a lot of people in Cambridge will know you. You'd hope. So in terms of, so let's go back to when it very first started. And obviously, yes, there was a need for it, but talk to me how that all just came about.
Yeah, as I say, there was an amazing group called the Cambridge Venues Group, and they campaigned long and hard with the city council, with the arts council, with funders to build what was at that stage just one building, as I say, in the middle of a muddy field. So they moved all the cows out, moved all the cattle out, and plonked this slightly odd hexagonal shaped building in the middle of a muddy field. And most of our funders, most of our audiences remember us as that, really. You know, people who were here in the 90s remember sitting in their cars before gigs and queuing up for tickets for Blur and the portaloos that we used to have in the car park prior to having proper facilities. We have very proper facilities in the building now. And for anybody who's not been here and is now worried that there are proper toilets, we have proper toilets. But I think everybody remembers us as this hub of creativity, a hub for a safe place for young people to go. You know, it was very much about giving a space to young people to occupy, I suppose. And I think that was one of the things for me. Like I've been here 6 years now, and we celebrated our 30th birthday in 2004. And no, not 2004, 2020. The pandemic has gotten in the way of my thinking for a second. 2020, we had our 30th anniversary, and we brought together a lot of the founding team from those early days. The first board and a lot of the early management team came along. And one of the things that really struck me and made me feel very proud, you know, that sense of stewardship you have of an organisation, a charity like this, that they all said how true to the establishing ethos of the building we had been and how far we had exceeded that as well, particularly in terms of the really bespoke way that we're working with young people now, really co-creating work with them. We're not imposing our work on young people. We're having conversations with young people about what it is they want to explore, what it is they want to tell us, what the stories they want to tell, and really thinking about how we explore that with them. So I think that sense of co-creation is so vital to our being a centre of excellence for our work with young people with complex needs. And it really is also now a focus. Obviously, yeah, any young person can come to a gig here, can come to a show here, and we see lots of young people at clubs and gigs. But the thing that's really crucial is that we're working with young people with complex needs who don't have access to these things regularly, who might feel marginalised by a city, which I don't know whether you've seen. There was a report in 2017 which said that Cambridge was the most unequal city in the country, the biggest gap between wealth and poverty. And obviously, Cambridge has this great reputation for its universities, for the wealth and the heritage of those institutions, and not a lot of people see the really significant challenges that young people have in the city, the inequalities of access to healthcare and education that are really the challenges of inequality in the city. And so our focus is really working with those young people, working with young people who are excluded from mainstream education, who are self-excluding. We're working with a fantastic charity called Red Balloon, who are working with young self-excluding people, working with young people in hospital schools, so often working with young people in secure psychiatric settings, working with SEND schools and educational settings, working with the autism cabins, and working with Total Arts, as Sammy says, who are a fantastic group of young people who've been coming here every 2 weeks. Some of them have been coming here for 14 years now. This is, you know, a really essential part of their creative lives, their lives outside of the building. It's what gives them real confidence to engage with everything in the city, you know, whether it's having the confidence to phone up a new employer, having the confidence to go to the cinema on your own. But these are young people who didn't have that confidence before. They had that anchor, that sort of creative anchor that we provide here in the building, which, yeah, as I say, gives them the confidence to then fully explore their lives in lots of different ways.
That and I think even that, you know, part of what I do, as I say, I work with children on the SEND register, and I travel. I'm all over the UK, so actually, there's a lot of time, and I do a fair amount in Cambridge, actually. But even then, I hadn't heard from you. I hadn't heard of the organisation until obviously when your board members messaged me. And it's so heartwarming to hear stuff that's going on, because I tend to go into a city for maybe 2 or 3 days. I come away again. I then go somewhere else. I come away, and I keep. And it maybe I'm there 3 or 4 times a year, but I'm generally in running events in hotels, running events back in the car, and that's generally my life. In terms of, obviously, from going from gigs to then all of these programs, how did that work? Was that just were these programs, did they want to do these programs at the beginning, or is it a case of actually we're a venue first to start with everything going on that young people can come to, and safe place to have gigs and everything else, to then, or was this all the beginning, or is this sort of developed over time?
It's really developed over time. I think things like Total Arts, as I say, that started 14 years ago now.
Yeah.
Our youth company, Junction Young Company, started around about the same time. For me, I came into the organisation 6 years ago, and I think there was still something of a sense of, arts organisations always talk about outreach and the work that happens outside of the building, and I've sort of erased that vocabulary from our lexicon, if you like, because I don't see it as outreach. It's intrinsic to what we do. It's really an integral part of everything that we do. Our creative learning programs are as important as our popular culture program, as our artistic program, as the artist development that we do. All of these things are, a lot of these things are things that are subsidized. They are things that we need to find funding for. But the thing that is really crucial to find support for at the moment for us is that work with young people, because it's so vital. The need is so clear in the city. Creativity is the way that we inspire people. It's the way that people are allowed to tell their stories, find their voice, find a career, really very viable and successful careers in the arts. Excuse me, even though they're also some of the most challenging careers as well. But I think it's such a, I've seen through my career in the arts, working on projects like Creative Partnerships, which was a project that sadly died in 2010. At the last change of political administration. So it's interesting, be very interesting to see how things change with the new political administration. But Creative Partnerships was an astonishing project, working in schools, developing creative skills, developing projects, project-based learning with young people. So rather than being hyper-focused on the curriculum, really looking at how you can explore all sorts of things around the curriculum through the projects that young people really want to explore. If young people decide on the stories they want to tell and how they want to tell them, they have an entirely different sense of agency and ownership over those things. And that gives us license to do things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And they tell stories which are far more surreal, far funnier, and far more joyous, I think, than if we had come in and said, okay, let's do another version of a Shakespeare play, or let's do, play this music that I've written for you to play. It's much more exciting to have them make the music, make the film, decide on the story, and have that sense of ownership and produce things which are genuinely genius in terms of both their humor and their, what am I trying to say, how unusual those things are as well.
Yeah, so I think a real highlight in everyone's calendar at Cambridge Junction is the annual film festival that we have just over the road at the Light Cinema, who very kindly allow us to use one of their screens for 2 days. And it's a fantastic opportunity for all the young people to have their work platformed on sort of a grand scale on the big screen. So it's a culmination of a lot of our creative learning projects actually from the year, where we have around 14 film screens. Some of them are short films. We also have, from some of our music programs, some rap videos that are screened. And it's just a really amazing celebration of all these young people. And afterwards, we come back here and we have a bit of a disco, and we have a food buffet. We have speeches where the young people come up and collect an award. Some of the things they say are just incredible and reminds us why we do what we do, I suppose. At our most recent film festival, which was actually just last month, one of the young people's from a SEND school who took part in one of the films that was screened came up and collected an award and announced in front of everybody that this was the most appreciated that they had ever felt, which was an incredibly moving moment for all of us.
And they come in. There's a guy called Oliver who's one of the sort of long-term Total Arts participants, and he came in to make stop motion animation. You know, that was the thing that hooked him. I think he was largely non-verbal at the time as well, and he has developed enormous confidence. He now introduces the awards. He gives long, often too long, speeches both before and afterwards. And now he wants to pursue a career as an actor and a director, and he's facilitating creative learning projects back in his old schools with the professional filmmakers that we have going into those schools to make those things. So he's all of these things start very small, but they open up. You know, one of our participants talked about opening up a chest full of possibility and having a new shade put on their lives and realizing that anything was possible. And this is just through something relatively simple. I mean, it is very complex. It's very time consuming. We have to work all year round and over many years to have this impact. But it's just the simple act of making a piece of art, essentially a film with somebody, can show them where their skills can take them, can show them the talent that they undoubtedly have. You know, we don't talk about making artists of the future. These young people are artists now. You know, they're very definitely really skilled storytellers, really skilled musicians. And we just want to amplify that and give that a platform through everything that we do.
So yeah, something that we're putting more emphasis on now is creating employment opportunities for some of these young people. And I mean, specifically with disabled young people, as of 2022, I think 54.5% of young disabled people were unemployed. And that's something that we're really trying to combat right now. So some of the schools that we engage with, such as the SEND schools, will then employ some of these artists, such as some of the young people from our Total Arts group, will come in and work as artist facilitators, and then in turn inspire another generation of artists.
There is so much going on, but you can tell there's a passion there. You can tell, and the thing is, obviously, in what we do as a collective, there is that need. And actually, the amount of young people that we all work with that just need that chance. And as you say, you know, there's that light bulb moment to go, well, actually, you're creating hope. You're creating these opportunities for these young people to excel and actually go, this is what I want to do. This is, you know, this is what I want to be doing. So in terms of, if you imagine the number of people you work with, what do you think in terms of probably this last academic year? You know, I work in academic years. That's just that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm used to. How many young people do you think you've probably worked with over that sort of time?
We've worked with nearly 7,000 young people over the last year. That's 7,000 engagements with our program over time. Some of the work we do is very focused and is with relatively small groups of young people, but then we're working with them week on week over a whole year, or we're working with them over a 10-week period or a 6-week period. Sometimes we're doing really intensive projects as well, so they might come into the Junction for 2 weeks to make a film. They're here every day. But yeah, 7,000 engagements with young people through that program over the last year.
Wow. And just to think the amount of young people that wouldn't have got these chances without what you do is phenomenal in terms of numbers, but just actually it's quite scary how many couldn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, like, come back to your point actually about, you know, how did the creative learning program come to be? I think it is about, you know, we know, like, probably everybody listening to this podcast will know that they feel better. They, you know, their well-being is increased by going to a gig, by seeing a show, by going to a comedy night, by knitting at home, by painting a picture. You know, we know that creativity. There's a fantastic stat. World Health Organization showed that participating in arts activities can reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression by 71%. and we know this anecdotally and evidentially, we know this. And we just want to make sure we reduce all the barriers for young people to engage with this. We know that, for lots of people, even yeah, I'll say even grown-ups, but lots of people feel a sense of anxiety about going into a theatre, going into an arts venue. They think it's not for them. They feel it's exclusive. We really pride ourselves on the welcome here. Being a welcoming home of original arts and entertainment is like core to our mission, and sharing the power of live performance and creativity is, absolutely our core purpose. Yeah. And it's by doing these projects with young people that we reduce those barriers. So, they're coming here every week so that they feel they have an ownership over this place. We know with people like Junction Young Company and Total Arts, they feel they own this place more than we do. Like, definitely, like they tell us every day what they want to see, what we should be doing. And that's absolutely how it should be. It shouldn't be us telling them how they should engage. It should be them telling us how we change to be better.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So obviously at the moment, so you've worked with 7,000 young people this year. Obviously a number of other projects going on. Let's look ahead for the next couple of years. What, are there, obviously looking to I'm assuming probably increase that number of people you work with. Are there any new programs that you're looking at? Where do you want to be as an organisation the next couple of years?
I mean, it's been a really challenging time. It is a really challenging time still. I mean, this is true across the charitable sector. It's particularly true in the arts and cultural sector at the moment. We're very aligned not only on trusts and foundations, on individual giving, but also on the subsidy we get from Arts Council England and from local authorities. Arts Council England subsidy and local authority funding has reduced significantly over the last 14 years, and we don't think that's going to change dramatically in the near future. So we're looking to fundraise hard to support all of that work that we're doing with young people, and also supporting that work we're doing with artists as well. We work with something like 2,500 artists each year as well, and so sustaining that revenue is vital. That is the thing that will allow us to, as you say, expand the programs. We've got a brilliant plan that we're currently fundraising for, a longer term music project. As I say, like we ask young people regularly what it is that they want to do. And a lot of the time recently, that's been about making films, because young people are really screen literate and they can see a role for themselves either in front or behind the camera. But increasingly over the last, I'd say 3-4 years, they're saying we want to make beats, we want to write rhymes. I struggle a bit with the language on this one. It's all about beats and bars, isn't it? Beats and bars. And so that a lot of the work is in drill and grime and trap music, and you can tell I'm down with the kids, but that it's amazing what we're seeing coming through. Real creativity, really strong wordsmiths, people who can write brilliantly, have really fantastic vision for what they want their videos to look like, how they want to represent themselves on social media. And so we really want to expand that project so that we're also developing those young people as leaders as well, so that they can then develop the skills to go back into their community and support other young people like them and be both inspiration and mentor, I suppose. And so that's a project that we want to establish over the next few years, building on a project called Beats, Trials and Tribulations that we've been developing over the last few years. And we've just started what is essentially an open mic club, although it's not going to be called Open Mic Club because young people wouldn't call it an open mic club. But we've got a space where they're coming in every few weeks. They can take over a venue. We put out sofas. We've got all the equipment they need on stage, so they can have a DJ on stage, so they can get up on stage and do their rhymes. And I think that is something that we really want to see developing over the next few years, because it's got a really strong sense of both the culture that young people want to explore and developing that community and that sense of ownership over the building that we want another group of people like Total Arts, like Junction Young Company have already, but more specifically focused on music.
And when we fundraise for the Open Mic Club, which I'll call it just for lack of another name right now, Of course, we put a lot of planning into fundraising for it and how we could structure that as far as we could, because obviously, as Matt said, we wanted that to be co-led by the young people. So we weren't actually too sure on how that would actually look like. But now it's started and it's become incredibly popular. And we knew the need was there. And from previous projects, we know that there's always been a great turnout. But we have an incredible creative learning team, Beth, Katie, and Robin. And they were just overjoyed after the first session with the turnout that we had. I think it was probably about 3 times as many young people actually ended up attending, which is just brilliant. So yeah, they're really taking the helm with this project at the moment.
It's so thing is as well. It's so important to ask young people what they want. So many organisations go, well, this is what we're going to do for young people, and they wonder why it doesn't always work. Well, you need to speak to them.
Yeah,
They'll inform you what they'd like to do, and if you can adapt what you're doing for it, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the small benefits of the pandemic was obviously the massive challenge was we obviously had to shut the doors to the public. We couldn't put any shows on for nearly 2 years, and that was, it was only through the generosity of the Cultural Recovery Fund that we could survive that. And any arts organisation could get through that because it was a genuine existential risk. But one of the things that our creative learning team were able to do in that period when we couldn't be in the building was do detached work and be out on the street talking to young people and developing those trust relationships through which we can have those conversations, as you say, really asking young people what it is they want to see. And that's where we started to hear, we want somewhere to come and share our music and somewhere to come and make videos and somewhere where we can meet other people who are interested in the same things, basically.
Yeah.
And of course, in the sort of the past 14 years, we've seen that there's been so much less of an emphasis on the arts and subjects at schools. And we've seen that there's been a huge drop off of students taking part in art subjects at GCSE and in A levels. And even the extracurricular arts activities, I think I read a stat, it was about 50% of primary schools and a third of secondary schools have either reduced or completely scrapped their extracurricular arts activities. So we just want to continue providing that space for these young people.
And this is the thing. I think it's, and obviously as we are recording this, obviously we now have a new government in place. So again, we'll be, at the time of talking, it will be interesting to see what they do. Because actually, from a sports background like myself, but also love my music, involved in drama and all these other. So actually, I get why you're doing what you're doing, and I get that because actually, children and young people need to be part of something.
Yeah.
And actually, if they're not getting that at school, which for whatever reason, as you say, the numbers are declining, there were things not happening. Well, actually, to have a safe place, and that's fundamentally that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're talking about us. We're talking about a safe place for young people to come, where they can actually be themselves without worrying about fear or judgment of others, and actually just be themselves. This is why it's so important. It is so important because otherwise, a lot of these young people will feel even more marginalised. They'd have less probably communication with other young people, especially when you're talking about young people on the set register and who have sort of additional needs. Actually, they need this involvement with other people.
And
it's it's so vital.
Yeah, we know a lot of the young disabled people that we work with, they're at much greater risk of facing social isolation just because, things like inaccessible environments and social stigma. So we, like the film festival that I mentioned earlier, we have these great opportunities for these social cohesions, which are brilliant.
I actually love it. And one thing I am going to do, and I'll say this on this podcast, I am going to come and visit you.
Oh,
So
amazing.
the thing is, I'm only in Essex, so it's not as if I'm that far, and I'm in Cambridge a fair bit with what we do anyway. So I will, whatever happens, I will be in touch and I will come and visit.
Oh,
That'd be
brilliant.
brilliant.
Delighted to have you.
I was going to say, like you say, that I think there are so many similarities between, you know, grassroots sport in school, grassroots cultural activity in school, practical science in school as well. You know, there's lots of very similar priorities, I think, for, you know, friends of ours up at the Cambridge Science Centre, getting young people engaged in science. I think we sort of share this desire to really connect with young people and give them the opportunities that we know they will thrive through, you know, growing confidence, growing skills, be happier, healthier young people. I know if every young person had the opportunities that we've had to engage with sport and art and science, I think, you know, we could change the world.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's generally how I work in terms of everything that I do. If I can impact one person a day, and actually they will go away and impact one person a day. And by doing this and providing the opportunities we provide and the opportunities you provide and all those other organisations out there that do this around the world, and it's not because we know these issues aren't just in the UK. Actually, if we can do this and provide a platform and a safe place for so many of these young people to come to, actually the world will be a better place. It will be a better place. So in terms of and generally, as I say, we know that most issues are around funding. If there was another area where you think actually we could really do a help or we could really have a hand with this, what would that be?
That's a very good question. I mean, we always say the easiest way for people to help us is to buy a ticket for a show or buy a drink at the bar, you know, because we're a charity and a social enterprise. Every drink contributes to our income and our ability to subsidise our work. Join us as a member as well. We have a fantastic web supporter and patron scheme. So if you've got a bit more cash, join us that way. I think, you know, our big plans, I think our big long-term plans, and I have to be very careful what I can and can't say at the moment, but we're really interested in how we can develop the building and the site that we are on, and we're looking at who our partners might be for that large-scale capital development. And I think less than this, obviously we need to raise significant money for that, but people who can help us with that, you know, people who know about large capital projects, people who understand the challenges that we might be facing, people who can help us with those questions at the moment. I think more than money, it's the conversation with the team about how we can do that. And I think, you know, everybody is looking for new and exciting ways to evaluate the work that we do, look at the impact of the work that we do. And we're using a really interesting new methodology for those people listening who are excited by evaluation frameworks. But we're using a methodology called most significant change, which you might have come across, which is a really brilliant way of capturing qualitative evaluation that tells you a story that you might not know about yourselves. And so lots of the ways that we're talking about the work in terms of confidence building is coming through the stories that we're collecting from people. But I think people who can help us think about how we capture the impact and value of what we do, I think would be super useful, because we're just, like you say, not all of our work is very visible. You know, what we do in terms of a performance program, you know, is very visible. People know us as a music venue, or they know us as a comedy venue. The work that we do with young people, although we make it very visible through things like the film festival, it's not day to day as visible, because it's often happening outside the time that people are in the building. But I think how we tell a really compelling story about what we do, because like you said, we do a huge amount of work, but putting that into 2 or 3 sentences and selling that story. I mean, essentially, that's what any charity needs
Yeah.
to do, is sell their story as brilliantly as possible. And people who can help us with that are, people who I would like to meet.
So if you're listening to this and you can help them with this, get in touch, because what we will do, we'll put all your contact information out at the end anyway.
Great.
So,
Brilliant.
to be fair, I think we could talk for hours, but we're coming to the end. So, but obviously we'll continue this when I come and see you.
Yeah, brilliant.
So if someone was listening right now, what is the one thing you'd like them to do?
I think, as Matt says, we're a social enterprise. So I think if you haven't had the introduction to Cambridge Junction yet, come see a show. And I think that's just a great way to become familiar with us, and then get to find out more about all the sick charity work that we do.
Yeah, come and see a show. Meet me at the bar. Although I'm not drinking, but meet me at the bar.
Yeah, we're not going to get a free drink because you're a social enterprise, so you need to buy it.
But I think, like Sammy says, something we've not mentioned is we have a fantastic apprenticeship scheme here. And so we have at least a couple of apprentices every year. And we have the opposite. I like to say we have the opposite of a retention problem, in that those apprentices are often still with us 10, 14 years later, like seriously. So people are starting work with us at 17 as an apprentice, and they're still here. Our head of creative learning is an ex-apprentice. Our operations manager is an ex-apprentice. Senior duty manager is an ex-apprentice. And those apprentices have such an embodied sense of who we are and what we do. And that sense of welcome is in every person, every interaction that people have with the building. If you phone up our box office, if you have your ticket checked at the door, you'll get a sense of who we are. And I think that gives people the best flavour of who we are and what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like to say we're more than a building, we're a community. We're a community of artists and audiences and young people. And long may that continue.
Gents, if people want to check you out, where can they find you?
We're all over social media, on all your socials, and easy to find. And our website is junction.co.uk.
Amazing. Matt and Sammy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. No problem. It's been a pleasure listening. I will be in touch. Do not worry.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in or tuning in. I'm your host, Don Fenton. This is the Charity Connector, and I'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.